Picture this, right? Warm sun on your shoulders, the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing, and soft sand between your toes. A day at the beach is literally the ultimate symbol of relaxation. I mean, we all have this idyllic, postcard perfect perception of the coast. Usually, the biggest threat we even think about is just, getting sand stuck in the car. But behind that breathtaking scenery, there lies an incredibly dynamic and honestly, sometimes highly hazardous environment. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stripping away the Instagram filters and looking at the raw, unedited truth about our shorelines. Okay, let's dive into this. What is the real cost of a day at the beach? We're going to look at the hidden physical, biological, and economic realities of coastal visits. Because think about it, when we pack our beach bags, we rarely consider the complex ecosystem we're actually stepping into. By the end of this explainer, I promise, you're going to see your favorite stretch of sand in a completely new and much more informed light. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the ocean's raw power, then look at wild and unpredictable encounters, move into the invisible toxic threats, break down the staggering economic cost, and finally wrap up with safely navigating the sand. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the ocean's raw power. Now, what's really interesting about this first point is how easily we get lulled into a false sense of security by a calm horizon. But the ocean? It's basically a giant engine of kinetic energy. Perfectly serene conditions can literally turn deadly in just a matter of minutes. Take a look at this number, 82. That is the chilling tally of marks carved into a wooden warning sign for hikers on the trail to Hanakapiai Beach in Kauai. Every single one of those marks represents a drowning victim. It's intense. Because there are no major reefs to block the currents there, the rip currents and shore breaks are incredibly powerful. To put that into perspective, if you get swept out, the nearest safe shore is about 6 entire miles away. It's a very sobering visual reminder of just how unforgiving the water can be. And we see this wild contrast between idealized beauty and deadly reality all over the globe. Take Manukau Harbor in New Zealand, for example. On one hand, you have these absolutely stunning black sand beaches. Beautiful, right? But on the other hand, you have the hidden, deadly realities. Incredibly strong rip currents, jagged rocks under the surface, and sudden sheer drop-offs. Even when it looks totally calm, the weather can shift so rapidly, whipping up waves of 3 to 5 feet in a matter of minutes. Unfortunately, this deceptive calm results in an average of 5 to 10 drowning incidents every single year. These physical hazards take so many different forms depending on where you are. Over at Praia do Norte in Portugal, winter storms generate these massive 100-foot waves. Sure, they attract pro surfers, but they also create treacherous undertows and severe hypothermia risks for the unprepared. Then, down in Namibia along the Skeleton Coast, you've got freezing Atlantic currents mixing with zero visibility fog and extreme daytime heat. It's like a whole other world out there. And it's not even just the open ocean. In Florida, there's Eagle's Nest Cave. It's this massive 300-foot underwater sinkhole that people actually call the Mount Everest of diving. Tragically, its extreme depths have claimed 12 lives since the 1980s. Moving on to Section 2, wild and unpredictable encounters. Here's the thing we often forget. When we step onto the beach or wade into the surf, we are stepping into a wild habitat. We are just the visitors. The locals just happen to have fins or fur. Recent data shows Florida led the entire nation in shark bites in 2025. Over on Reunion Island, they're dealing with ongoing, very serious concerns over shark attacks that are heavily impacting their local surfing community. But, and this brilliantly illustrates the larger points, the answer to these encounters isn't as simple as just eradication. Look at Kagari in Australia. After some really tragic encounters with tourists, researchers from UNSW Sydney pointed out that using lethal measures like culling the local dingo population is highly unlikely to actually make visitors any safer. It's really all about managing our own human behavior and respecting the wildlife's territory rather than trying to conquer it. All right, Section 3, the invisible toxic threats. Okay, this right here brings us to the climax of this explainer. Because honestly, the most pervasive common dangers you're going to face at the beach, they aren't massive 100-foot waves or apex predators. They're actually entirely microscopic. Based on some really extensive investigations by the Natural Resources Defense Council, the NRDC, we know for a fact that polluted beach water is a massive public health issue. Basically, when untreated sewage and contaminated urban runoff flood into our coastal waters, they bring a massive invisible wave of disease-causing organisms right along with them. Let's break down exactly what these microscopic threats are. It's kind of like a rogues gallery in the water. First, you have protozoa, like Giardia lamblia, which usually comes from human and animal waste and can cause some really nasty stomach flu. Then you've got bacteria, like Vibrio cholerae. Yes, the stuff that causes cholera, which absolutely thrives in warmer waters. And finally, you have harmful algal blooms, which most of us know as red tides. These are fueled by nutrient-rich runoff. Now, here is what is truly terrifying about these toxic algae. The toxins can actually aerosolize. That means they become airborne. You could literally be standing on the boardwalk, suffering from respiratory distress, dizziness, or even seizures without ever setting a single foot in the water. Crazy, right? And as you might expect, these pathogens hit our most sensitive populations the absolute hardest. Children under the age of 9 face a twofold increase in gastrointestinal illness from waterborne pathogens during the summer swimming months compared to other age groups. But what makes this so incredibly tricky to track is that the symptoms can take anywhere from just a few days to 2 whole weeks to actually show up. Oh, and get this, a 2009 study even found a positive association between simply coming into contact with beach sand near a sewage outfall and the risk of getting sick. You don't even have to swim to be at risk. Let's move to how weather patterns play into this and see how this builds up the risk. A 2012 study out of California looked at surfers during dry weather versus post-storm conditions, and wow, the results were stark. Basically, heavy rainfall acts like a giant flush for the city. It pushes all that urban runoff and dangerous bacteria directly into recreational surf zones. So if you're hitting the waves right after a storm, your health risks are significantly elevated. To make matters even more complex, changing climates are acting as a huge threat multiplier. Because the waters are getting warmer, the ranges for these pathogens are actually expanding. For example, that cholera-causing bacteria we mentioned earlier, it is nearly 20 times more likely to occur when water temperatures creep over 66.2 degrees Fahrenheit. We're also seeing toxic algae species blooming way earlier in the year, and they're shifting northward into areas that literally never used to see them. Down off the coast of Florida, red tides are happening with much greater frequency, lasting for more months out of the year, and popping up a lot closer to the shore. Which brings us to Section 4, the staggering economic cost. So when these beaches become too toxic or dangerous to visit, the financial fallout for coastal communities is just immense. Take a look at Coney Island's Wonder Wheel here. It's a perfect snapshot of this massive coastal tourism machine. I mean, Americans take over 900 million trips to coastal areas every single year. Economic activity directly tied to the ocean pumped over $222 billion into the U.S. economy in just one single year. We're talking about an industry that supports tens of millions of jobs. So, the crucial point here is how economists break this down. They value a single typical swimming day at approximately $35 per visitor. Now scale that up, multiply that by thousands of visitors on a busy weekend. A single day of beach closure due to poor water quality creates an incredibly steep, immediate economic loss for that local community. It hits them right in the wallet. But, and this is the kicker, ignoring the problem is actually way more expensive. If local governments fail to monitor the water, or if they just refuse to close polluted beaches, the local economy still pays the price, just in a different way. A study in Southern California found that fecal contamination at beaches in Los Angeles and Orange counties causes hundreds of thousands of excess gastrointestinal illnesses every year. The public health cost for that? A staggering estimated $21 million to $51 million annually. That's all going straight to medical costs and lost workdays. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, safely navigating the sand. So where does all this leave us? Listen, the goal of this explainer is absolutely not to scare you away from the coast. We love the beach. It's about empowering you to interact with these incredibly dynamic ecosystems smartly and safely. So here are your actionable takeaways for your next trip. Step 1, always respect the ocean's physical power. Check local tides, look out for rip current warnings, and seriously, swim near the lifeguards. Step 2, give the wildlife their required space. Remember, it's their home, we're just visiting. Step 3, never enter the water immediately after heavy rainfall, because that's when toxic urban runoff is at its absolute peak. And Step 4, on a broader community level, support green infrastructure investments, things like rain gardens and permeable pavements. The data shows that investing in water quality pays for itself many times over in massive long-term economic and public health benefits. Which brings us to our final slide. We've uncovered the raw power of the currents, the reality of the local wildlife, those crazy invisible microscopic threats in the water, and the massive economic stakes involved. So I want to leave you with this thought. Knowing what physical forces and toxic threats are actually lurking in the surf, how will your relationship with your local beach change the next time you pack your towel and sunscreen? Thank you so much for exploring the hidden realities of our shores with me today. Stay curious, stay safe, and I will see you in the next explainer.